Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasati Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasati Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Madhava, Radha Madhava, Radhe Radha Madhava, Radha Madhava, Radhe, Jaya Radha Gokulananda, Radha Gokulananda, Radhe Radha Gokulananda, Radha Gokulananda, Radhe, Jaya Radha Londonishwara, Radha Londonishwara, Radhe Radha Londonishwara, Radha Londonishwara, Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jai Radhe, Jai Shri Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe, Jaya Radha Madan Mohan, Radha Madan Mohan, Radhe Radha Madan Mohan, Radha Madan Mohan, Radhe, Jaya Radha Gopinatha, Radha Gopinatha, Radhe Radha Gopinatha, Radha Gopinatha, Radhe, Jaya Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Radhe Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jai Radhe, Jai Shri Radhe, Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Jaya Shri Radhe, Jaya Radha, Ramana Radha, Ramana Radhe, Radha Ramana, Radha Ramana Radhe, Jaya Radha, Damodar Radha, Damodar Radhe, Radha, Damodar Radha, Damodar Radhe, Jaya Radha, Shyam Sundar, Radha Shyam Sundar, Radhe, Radha Shyam Sundar, Radha Shyam Sundar, Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Jaya Radhe, Jai Jaya Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Jaya Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jai Giri Govardhan, Jai Giri Govardhan, Jai Giri 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 Govardhan, Jai Giri Govardhan, Giri Govardhan, Jai Giri Govardhan, Jai Giri Govardhan, Jaya Nitai Sachi Sundar, 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 Nitai Sachi Sundar. Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jai Gurudev, 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 Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Gurudev. Jai Hare Krishna, lockdown with Krishna ki jai. Thank you all for coming. I want to welcome Sundar Gopal, Varshana Mataji, Nalini Mataji, Ben, Pandava Prabhu, and Bhagavati Mataji, Jotalal, and who is hiding here for others, Rashmi, Samir, and Dharm is here as well, and Amar. Thank you very much for coming. Hare Krishna. Wonderful of seeing you all. 11. That's a big number. So I want to, we have a special guest tonight. I want to quickly, briefly introduce Sundar Gopal, calling from beautiful and warm and tropical Costa Rica. Costa Rica, Hare Krishna. So Sundar Gopal has been known to many of us. He's the author of two wonderful books, the Book of Dharma and Yoga, what was it, of the Night of the Dark Soul. Was that? I'm sure I got it wrong now.
Yoga and the Dark Night of the Soul.
Yoga and the Dark, no, not the Dark Soul, the Dark. Yes, okay, Hare Krishna. So that is the two books. And Sundar Gopal will talk a little bit about Krishna's pastimes. And for those who don't know, it's not really that important or relevant. Sundar Gopal is my oldest son as well. So I think we're handing the microphone over to you, Sundar, and we'll be all ear. And Ben, you just keep the recording going and we'll take it from there. Microphone is all yours, Sundar.
Okay. Well, first I want to, I feel honored and humbled to be here in the presence of so many Vaishnava. And I have met some of you, so it's a real pleasure for me to connect with you again, even though I can just see your images and not you all in person. But in Leicester, there are such beautiful and dedicated devotees I remember, and I just feel very honored to connect with you again. As you know, next week in Costa Rica, it's on Tuesday. I believe in England it's on Tuesday. Is Sri Krishna Janmastami. So I thought I would share a few things that I've heard from my Guru Maharaj and the Acharyas. Krishna's beautiful activities and the auspicious festival day of Sri Krishna Janmashtami. So I'll start off just with a quick Mangala Charanam. Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Guru Jnana Dadina Bandho Swananda Data Karunaika Sindho Vrindavana Sina Hitavatara Prasidha Radha Pranaya Prachara Yuvatinang Yata Yuni Yunancha Yuvato Yata Mano Bhiramate Tadvan Mano Bhiramatang Tvai Rasang Prashang Santu Kavitvanishta Brahmamritang Veda Shiro Nivishta Vayang Tugunja Kalitavatang Sang Grihitavang Shankamapi Shrayama Trinadapi Sunichena Karorapi Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. First, I offer my Dandavat Pranam at the lotus feet of my dear spiritual master, Nityalila Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtutara Shatashishimad, Shira Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I also offer my Dandavat Pranam again and again at the lotus feet of Nityalila Pravishtam Vishnupad Shishimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Shira Prabhupada, and unto all the acharyas in our line. I offer my Dandavat Pranam to all of you, the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. So the day of Shri Krishna Janmashtami is, as it's coming up, a great time to begin focusing our attention on this particular. This day is non-different from Krishna himself. And it takes place on an Ashtami. Ashtami is when the moon is half the size. So it's not a full moon, it's not a new moon, but it's exactly half. Krishna takes birth in the dark lunar fortnight. So as the moon is becoming smaller and smaller towards Amavasya, Krishna takes his birth, and he takes his birth at midnight. So it's said in the astrological texts, Vedic astrological texts, that anyone who takes their birth in the dark lunar fortnight, they are destined, their character will be that of a thief. Krishna not only takes his birth in the dark lunar fortnight, but also at midnight. So you can imagine what quality of thievery he has. Right from a young age, he's stealing the clothes of the little gopi girls, he's stealing the butter and the yogurt of all the gopis, and he's stealing, most importantly, he's stealing the hearts of all the devotees. Now, the lunar fortnight afterward, that comes after Krishna's birth, is the birth of, also on Ashtami, as the moon is becoming larger, it's the birth of, does anyone know? Am I allowed to ask questions?
Yes.
Absolutely, please.
Okay. Does anyone know, not this coming Ashtami, but the Ashtami after, who takes birth?
Radharani?
Yes. Wonderful. So when the moon is becoming smaller, it has the shape of a D, and when it's becoming larger, it has the opposite shape. Like if you take a D and you invert it, and so you have two halves of a moon. And if you put these two halves of a moon, if you put these two Ashtamis together, what do you get? You get the full moon.
A full moon.
You get a full moon. And that's when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is on a full moon. Because he's Krishna with the mood and the complexion of Srimati Radhika. So the two halves facing each other are combined to create the full moon, on which day Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is born. And we celebrate that as Gaura Purnima. So what does it mean that Sri Krishna takes his birth? We shouldn't think of this as Krishna taking his birth a little more than 5,000 years ago, in the during the time of Rohini Nakshatra on a Wednesday. We should think that Sri Krishna Janmastami is the birth of Krishna within our own heart. So Krishna certainly took his birth a little more than 5,000 years ago in Braj. But this isn't a historical celebration. We're celebrating Sri Krishna Janmashtami as praying, please Krishna, manifest in my heart so that I can only think of you and not of anything else related to this world. Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm sure you all know this verse, Janma karma chame divyam evang yo veti tatvataha tyaktva deha punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna. So first, this is in chapter 4 of the Gita. First, Krishna has explained to Arjuna, I've learned this science of yoga I've passed on this science of yoga to Vivishwan, and Vivishwan to Manu, and Manu to Ikshvaku. And Arjuna is a little bit confused. He says, but how is that possible? Vivishwan was born far before you, Krishna. And Krishna explains. Krishna explains that Krishna explains, I can remember everything, Arjuna, but you cannot. And he says, he says this verse, anyone who understands my birth and my activities does not come back to this material world again, but comes back to me. So how important is this day of Sri Krishna Janmashtami? If we can understand it truly, not intellectually. Intellectually is helpful for our practice, but this is about understanding it truly with our heart and with the way in which we live our life. Then there's no more return to this world of birth and death. So I wanted to speak a little bit about what the Acharya, Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas in our line have explained about Krishna and Krishna's activities and his qualities. So beautiful. I'll start first with just a few verses from this is some of the most beautiful poetry that exists in the world. It's Srila Rupa Goswami's Padyavali. So in his Padyavali, what Srila Rupa Goswami has done is he's taken all the poetry, the best poetry that glorifies Krishna, that has been existing in the Vaishnav community. So there are Vaishnavas from South India. He's taken poetry from them. There's some beautiful verses by an amazing poet whose name is Purushottam Dev. Purushottam Dev is actually the father of King Prataparudra. So King Prataparudra was a contemporary of Mahaprabhu and took shelter of Mahaprabhu. His father is named Purushottam Dev. And these verses are just the most beautiful. Srila Rupa Goswami has compiled them and he's presented them as a book called Padyavali. They're not so well known. There are some translations, but they're actually quite difficult to get. So I'll recite a few verses from Padyavali and then continue with some beautiful stories about Krishna's qualities and activities. Ye govardhana moola kardamarasa vyadashtabarhangada ye vrindavana kukshishu vrajavadhu nilopadhana nicha ye chabhyanga sugandaya kuvalaya pidasya dhanam basa devo mangalamadishantu satatam kangsadvisho bahava. So this is Srila Rupa Goswami is giving here his Mangalacharna. This is one of the verses of his initial invocation. And he's addressing this. What he's speaking about in this verse is Krishna's powerful arms. He says, the bracelets of his arms are made of peacock feathers. Who would know? How would we know this? Krishna has beautiful bracelets and they're made of peacock feathers. He says these bracelets of peacock feathers are spattered with mud from the bottom of Govardhan Hill. In Vrindavan's caves, these arms are dark cushions used by the gopis of Braj. And they are sweetly scented by the perfume of Kuvalayapida. May those arms of Kamsa's enemy always grant you good fortune. So this is a blessing at the beginning of Padyavali. May those arms that are the enemy of Kamsa always grant you good fortune. Ambodhi stalatam stalatam jaladitam dhulilava shailatam shaili mritkanatam trinam kulishatam vajram trinakshinnatam vahani shitalatam himam dahanatam ayati yasyechaya lila durlalitad bhuta vyasanine Krishna yat yatasmai namaha. This verse is incredibly beautiful. Here, this is a verse about Krishna's ability to make the possible impossible and the impossible possible. So this verse says his mere desire, Krishna's mere desire turns an ocean into dry land and dry land into an ocean. It turns a speck of dust into a mountain and a mountain into a lump of clay. It turns straw into a bolt of thunder as hard as a diamond, and thunder into simple straw, fire into ice, and ice into flame. Obeisance to Krishna, who loves to play in wondrous and mischievous ways. So Srila Rupa Goswami explains that when Krishna, just by his presence, he actually changes the qualities of everything around him and makes them opposite. So what is cold becomes filled with heat. What's hard, like the stones, they begin to melt. The rivers, the Yamuna River flows not downwards, but it flows against its own current. Those beings who are full of life and they move around, like deer, the gopis, the birds, they remain stunned and they can't move. Even after Krishna and his friends have left, they remain there just looking. So one beautiful story about this is how Krishna goes to the forest with all of his friends and the cows. Now, Krishna's in the morning, the Gopas, his friends, help dress him because they are very eager to go to the forest as quickly as possible and play with him. So they come and they like to dress him in a very attractive way. And then Krishna, with the prasad that Yashoda Maya has made, like a pack lunch, and all the Gopas have pack lunches, they go to the forest. At that time, all the residents of Braj, in particular the gopis, along the way, they want to have darshan of Krishna. So they all come out of their homes. The Goswamis explain actually that Krishna, he's so beautiful when he goes to the forest, but when he comes back from the forest, he's even more beautiful because he's covered in dust and from his playing in the whole day, and there's perspiration flowing from his forehead, and it's such a beautiful sight. So, but when he goes to the forest, all the residents of Braj are waiting to, maybe Krishna will come along my path through my little village and we'll be able to see him. So there was one young girl, one gopi. She was very recently married, and she had heard so much about Krishna, but she had never actually seen him. This is something that's known as purvarag. It's deep attachment and desire to see Krishna and serve Krishna, but not having ever met him before. Maybe only have heard of him or seen a picture of him, like a painting. So this gopi decided, definitely, she heard that Krishna was coming. She said, definitely I'll see Krishna today. But her stepmother said, no, this is very dangerous. Krishna's like a black snake, and to see him is something that's dangerous. So you stay inside and just close all the doors and the windows and don't look. And the young gopi was confused. She said, but you're going, why can't I go? And the elderly gopi said, you don't understand. I'm warning you, this is for your own well-being. Don't even look in this direction. So she closed the door and went out to see Krishna. And this gopi, she was so intent on having darshan of Sri Krishna that there was a small crack in the door, and she was peering through this crack and waiting for Krishna to come. Krishna knows everything. So as he was passing by that house, there was a little calf in front of him, and he twisted the tail of the calf, and the calf jumped forward and immediately jumped towards that house and with its legs kicked the door open, so that one side of the door opened, and suddenly, in a moment, the gopi found herself directly in front of Krishna. And out of shyness, she looked down, and Krishna took his flute in his hand, and with his flute, he lifted up her chin and looked at her and smiled, and then went on his way. And in that smile and look of Krishna, he stole her life and soul. And even though Krishna and the Gopas had long gone into the forest, this young girl was simply looking in the direction of the empty pathway leading to the forest. The dust of the cows had already settled, but she couldn't stop looking with her mouth just open. The stepmother began to do the chores of the house and was thinking, where is this girl? And she saw her, and she understood what had happened. She said, now you've become as if possessed. The only solution is to engage you in hard work. Here, take this mortar and take this churning rod and begin churning this yogurt. Put all of your energy into that. We have so much work to do. So she took the churning rod and began churning, and there was a horrible grating sound. The stepmother came rushing in. She said, "What are you doing? This is not yogurt. These are sesame seeds. What has happened to you? You've lost your mind. Here, take these pots." And she put several clay pots on top of her head. "Take these pots, and here, take this baby. Look after this baby and go to the village well and fetch some water." So as if in a trance, she took the baby in her arms and she began walking towards the village square where there was this deep well. And she put the baby down and she began putting a rope around one of the pots to lower into the well. Immediately all the gopis stopped her. Stop, what are you doing? Why are you doing this?" And she looked and she saw, actually she was beginning to put the rope around the baby instead of the pot. So absent-minded and as if possessed. And they sent her back home. And the gopis began to speak. "We know what's happened. She's been possessed by the ghost of Shyam." So Krishna is so attractive. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he sings. He says, "Don't go to Mathura. Bandhu sange yadi tava sanga parihas." This very famous, very beautiful song by about Shri Krishna, where he warns, don't go to Keshigat. Because if you go to Keshigat and you see Krishna, your life will be finished. And then the next verse says, if you see Krishna, at least close your ears. Don't hear his flute. If you hear his flute, your family life will be spoiled. Actually, the song says, if you are interested in having a normal life, if you're interested in a family and worldly friends and so on, then don't go to Mathura. And if you go to Mathura, don't look. Keep your eyes closed. If you look, your life is in danger. But at least don't listen. If you listen and you hear the flute playing of Krishna, your life is over. Now here's the verse by Purushottam Dev. Adhare vinihita vangsham champaka kusume nakalpito tangsam vinatam dadhana mangsam vamang satatam namami jitakam sam. Krishna holds a flute to his lower lip. He's crowned with blossoms of champak flowers. And he leans gently to his left. I always bow down to him who conquered Kamsa. The next verse is by Srila Rupa Goswami himself. Some of the verses of Padyavali he's written, and we know he wrote them because he writes the compiler, which is him. Vivrita vividha badhe branti vega dagadhe balavati bhava pure majjato me vidure asharana gana bandho ha kripa kaumudindo sakrida krita vilambam dehi hastavalambam. So these verses are very, there's the reason why Srila Rupa Goswami compiled these verses for the Vaishnava community is so that we can meditate on them during the time of our sadhana. So when chanting and at all times of the day, when chanting and remembering Krishna, these verses bring so much inspiration. So Srila Rupa Goswami says here, far into the stormy, endless ocean of life I drown, pulled by the strong current of my confusion. O friend of those who have no refuge, O lustrous moon of mercy, please, just this once, quickly extend me your hand. Ya Draupadi paritrane, ya Gajendrasya mokshane, mayarte karuna murte, Satvarakva Gata Hare. And here this verse, it's speaking about Krishna's quality of speed, of swiftness. So this is by an Oriyan Vaishnav. It doesn't say who it is. No one knows. That's been lost in time. But it's a Vaishnav from Oriya. And this Vaishnav is he's addressing Hari or Krishna. He says, you used it to defend Draupadi. You used it to grant liberation to Gajendra. Hari, O compassion personified, where has your speed gone when it comes to wretched me? Oh, so you all know the story of Draupadi, how when Dushasana dragged her by her hair into the assembly of the Kurus and forcefully began to try to disrobe her. Then the Pandavas were powerless. They couldn't do anything because they had already pledged her to Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra. At first, Draupadi tried to fight. She's a Kshatriyani, so her natural inclination is she's a warrior queen. So she tried to resist and fight off Dushasana. But then she realized that she was unable to. So she raised her two hands and cried out to Krishna for help. In a moment, Krishna came to her rescue. And the Acharyas explain that Krishna himself took the form of the sari so that it became endless. So this is Krishna's avatar, as Krishna's incarnation or manifestation as the sari of Srimati Draupadi. Now, the story of Gajendra, I'm sure that you are all familiar with it as well. A great saintly king was cursed to become an elephant, very powerful elephant, and he would bathe with all of his she-elephants in a lake, and there was a crocodile that caught hold of his leg, and they fought for a huge amount of time. But elephants are very powerful on land, but in the water, the crocodile is far more powerful. So eventually Gajendra, he was practically drowning. He was pulled under the water. He could only with his trunk just about catch some air. And with his trunk, he plucked some lotus flowers that were growing in that lake. And he offered them to Krishna, to Lord Narayan. Now, Lord Narayan, and Srila Rupa Goswami explains, when he heard the call of Gajendra, which was a piteous call for help, he immediately jumped up from his throne in Vaikuntha. And at that time, he was surrounded by many servants, as always. He's surrounded by many attendants and servants. And a servant came, one of the Vishnudutas came and presented his shoes, because Sri Narayan shouldn't leave the palace without shoes. But Narayan was so confused because of the call of Gajendra that he pushed the servant aside. And barefoot, he began running towards his eagle Garuda. And without putting a saddle on Garuda, normally Garuda has a saddle. I didn't know this until I had read this explanation by Srila Rupa Goswami. So he jumped up bareback onto Garuda without even a saddle and rushed to where Gajendra was to help him. So with so much speed. But this Vaishnav from Oriya, he's saying, but where is your speed when it comes to wretched me? We'll have a look at two more verses and then discuss some other qualities of Krishna. Dina bandhuriti namate smaran yadavendra patitoham utsahe bhakta vatsalataya tvaishrute mamakam hridayamashu pate. This is such a beautiful verse. This is the most beautiful poetry in the world. I don't know why anyone wastes their time with anything else, honestly. So this is Sri Jagannath Sena, who's composed this verse. When I remember that you, Krishna, the Yadava king, are called Dina Bandhu, friend of the downcast. Then I, a fallen soul, take courage. But when I hear that you actually tenderly love your devotees, my heart begins to pound quickly in my chest. Vishayani vicharyani vichintyani punah punaha kripanasya dhanini va tvannamami bhavantunaha. For those of you who have a sadhana of chanting, this verse is very beautiful. And this verse is an inspiration. Here, the author is explaining how one should chant. Because Krishna and Krishna's name is non-different. In this world, the name of something and the thing that it names are that the connection is arbitrary. So, for example, a lamp, you could call it anything else, and as long as everyone agrees, it would be fine. But the word lamp, or whatever other word you use, is not itself the lamp. There's no true connection. But in the case of Sri Krishna, the name and the person who is named are non-different from each other. So Krishna's name, all of Krishna's qualities, pastimes, potencies are in the name. And actually, even to say that is not correct. It's not correct to say that Krishna is in his name. Krishna is his name. The pastimes are his name. His name are pastimes. They're non-different from each other. So here, this Vaishnav says, and you can maybe understand this, Vichayani, that means collected. Vicharyani means counted. Vichintyani means contemplated. Punaha, punaha means again and again. So the poet is saying, collected, counted, contemplated, again and yet again. May your names be for us like wealth is for a miser. So, even in business, if we're doing a business and we're making money, we're counting and we're collecting and we're thinking, how much will I get tomorrow? That's with that mood, we should approach Harinam. We should approach our practice of chanting Krishna's name. Eager, like a miser, to collect, to count, and to contemplate. Okay, the last verse. This one is also so beautiful. Dinado murare, nishado murare, dinarde murare, nishadde murare, dinante murare, nishante murare, tvameko gatirnas, tvameko gatirnaha. At the beginning of the day, Murari. At the beginning of the night, Murari. In the middle of the day, Murari. In the middle of the night, Murari. At the end of the day, Murari. At the end of the night, Murari. You are our only refuge. You are our only refuge. In other words, at every moment. Actually, there's only one day in the whole year in which we can do remembrance of Krishna. And that is today. Why? Because whatever plans we make in the future, we can only make them in the present day. Isn't it? I may say, okay, I will remember Krishna tomorrow, but I can only remember Krishna tomorrow when it becomes today. So today is all we have. We don't have tomorrow and we don't have yesterday. In fact, we don't even have an hour from now and we don't even have the hour that just passed. We have only this hour. So how important it is to remember Krishna now, not tomorrow, not at the next festival day, but every moment of our life. So Krishna's quality, Krishna is described as being having the complexion of a tamal leaf that's been smeared with musk. Or sometimes it's explained he's the color of a dark rain cloud, shyam color, blackish bluish color of a dark rain cloud. But I know you all know this because the head of our sampradaya has explained this. Who's the head of our sampradaya? I'm going to ask a question here.
Lord Brahma.
Shri Brahma, yes. Excellent. Thank you, Ben Prabhu. So Shri Brahma explains, Venum kvanantam aravinda dalayataksham barhavatang samasitang buddha sundarangam kandarpakoti kamaniya vishesha shobham govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Venu kvanantam. Venu is a flute. Krishna has several flutes. The one that he uses to attract the gopis is the Venu. Kvanantam means to play. So this is Brahma is explaining what he actually saw. So because he says Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Bhajami means to worship. After doing a lot of bhajan, then Brahmaji had this vision of Govinda, and he's describing it in his own words, and he's the head of our sampradaya. Venum kvanantam, aravinda is a lotus flower, dala, petal, alaya, blossoming. So Krishna's eyes, aksham, Krishna's eyes are like beautiful blossoming lotus flowers. Barhavatam, he wears a peacock feather, and his complexion is the color of a dark rain cloud. And then the next line is very beautiful. Kandarpa koti kamaniya vishesha shobham. Kandarpa means Cupid, the god of love, the god of attraction. In this world, we only know material attraction and material love. But even on a material level, it's already very powerful. So when a young girl sees a young boy, or a young boy sees a young girl in this material world, they become completely enchanted. They can become completely enchanted. They forget to eat. They can't sleep. Especially, at young age, teenagers, they lose all their sense. So here, to give some idea of Krishna's beauty, Brahmaji says, Kandarpa koti kamaniya vishesha shobham. Krishna is so attractive that it's as if koti, millions of cupids have shot their arrow. So someone who has even a moment's glimpse of Krishna, they lose. How can they have any attraction for anything in this material world? There's no comparison. And then Brahmaji says, Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Sri Rupa Goswami explains also how he says, how sweet, how full of nectar are these two syllables, Krishna. When I utter them, then I wish that I had not just one mouth, but thousands of mouths. I wish that I had not just 2 ears, but millions of ears. All my senses become inert because Krishna himself is dancing in the courtyard of my heart. So, at least, speaking for myself, very, very far away from anything like this. But it remains, as Gaudiya Vaishnavas in the line of Sri Rupa Goswami, this remains our aspiration. When will we be able to chant with tears, to utter Krishna's names with tears in our eyes, trembling, completely unconcerned about the futile things of this world? So Krishna has, it's said in the Vishnu Yamala, that the conditioned soul has 18 defects. Defects like, and these are very easy to recognize, or in the life of any human being. Defects like bewilderment, falling into error, sleep or lethargy, envy, exhaustion, lying, self-absorption and absorption in the world, prejudice, anger, various types of violence through our actions, our words, or our thoughts. So 18 defects. Lord Narayan doesn't have any of these defects. But Krishna has 16 of them. Krishna has 16 of these. And that's what makes Krishna greater than God. That's what makes Krishna greater than Narayan. So Narayan will never tell a lie. Satya Sankalpa. But Krishna, he disguised himself and the Pandavas as Brahmins. And they went to Jarasandha. And they said, they presented themselves as Brahmins, and Jarasandha was confused and said, I'll give you anything you want. And then they said, we are Kshatriyas. We've come here to fight you. Give us the opportunity to fight you in hand-to-hand combat. And then Jarasandha said, Krishna, I will not fight you because you're a cowherd. No one really knows what your lineage is. It would be humiliating for me even to be in battle with you. I'm a very powerful and Kshatriya coming from a lineage of kings. And we know that you have many dubious qualities. Arjuna, I won't fight you because you're younger than me, but Bhima, you are matched in strength and you're my age. I'll fight you. So this was Krishna's idea to just disguise, go in disguise and trick Jarasandha. And Krishna plays with his friends and he eats dirt. Yashoda Maya asks, I've heard that you've eaten dirt. Krishna says, my dear mother, I have never eaten dirt. We know that Krishna is a thief. He steals from the gopis. Krishna actually owns everything. Everything is for his enjoyment. So there's no possibility actually of Krishna stealing. And Krishna knows that the gopis have made yogurt and butter and they're hanging it in their houses, but they've actually made it for him. He knows that. But Krishna is so attracted, he doesn't even wait for them to offer it. He goes into their house at night just to steal it. You know the verse from Bhagavad Gita, Patram Pushpam Palantoyam. If you offer me water, a leaf, fruit, I'll accept it if it's offered with love and a pure heart. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that the word ashnami literally means to eat. So Krishna is so eager, he literally eats the flowers that are offered to him by his devotee. He eats the leaf. So there's a lovely story, and I'll finish with this. The lovely story of how Krishna went to Hastinapur. He wanted to broker peace between the Kauravas and the Pandavas. And Duryodhana, he thought, if I can get Krishna on my side, then I'm sure I'll win. Because the Pandavas, they depend on Krishna. What can they do without him? In fact, they'll be so upset and they'll probably die of sorrow and they won't even wish to fight. If Krishna's on my side, they won't wish to fight him. So if I can somehow connive to get Krishna on my side, then this battle may not even have to happen. So Duryodhana, he prepared all kinds of tasty dishes. He thought, the way to someone's heart is through their stomach, is what he thought. So he prepared so many dishes, and Krishna was just not interested because he understood that Duryodhana's motive was wrong. He was filled with selfishness and hatred for the Vaishnavas, for the Pandavas. So instead, Krishna neglected Duryodhana and went to the house of Vidura, his devotee Vidura. Vidura's wife Vidurani, it was unexpected for both of them that Krishna, imagine, Krishna just arrives and they didn't think he would come to their home. So Vidurani, she was filled with so much emotion that she immediately sat Krishna down and she began taking bananas and peeling them and offering and giving them to him to eat. But she was so full of emotion that she threw away the banana and was giving him the peels. And Krishna was eagerly eating the peels of the bananas. And then Vidura saw, and he rushed to try and stop her. But Krishna was so happy with that offering. We know also that Krishna becomes bewildered, like when Brahmaji has taken the cows and the calves and he's put them away in a cave. Then Krishna began searching, and for a moment he was bewildered. Krishna becomes completely bewildered by the gopis, and more than anything, he becomes bewildered and overpowered by Srimati Radhika. So, how beautiful are these qualities and pastimes of Sri Krishna? Far more beautiful. Well, all of Krishna's avatars and Narayan, the Supreme Lord, there's no words that can describe Narayan or that can describe the beauty of Sri Ram. But Krishna is the most beautiful. That's why his name is Krishna, the most attractive. So how fortunate we are that we're coming to learn a little bit about this by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, who came to this this land of Malechas and has put us in connection with this ancient bhakti tradition and the worship of Sri Radha and Krishna. How fortunate we are. And Nanda Baba, so there will be Janmastami. The next day is the festival of Nanda Maharaj, Nandotsava. On that day, Nanda Maharaj gave so many gifts to the Brahmanas and he gave so much away. He also gave one gift to this world, and that's the gift of Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada's auspicious appearance day is on the day of Nandotsava, the day just after Shri Krishna Janmashtami. We'll stop here. Thank you so much for the opportunity to discuss these beautiful topics. Again, I offer my pranam to all of you. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Sundar. Questions, comments, anyone, everyone, please.
If any of you have questions later, because sometimes what happens, at least for me, is that so many questions come. I have a lot of questions, but a little bit later. But so if at any point any of you have questions over the coming days, I'm always at your service. If there's any way I can answer them or point you in the direction of the teachings of Srila Prabhupada or our acharyas, I'll happily send you a message and share whatever I can with you.
Yes, of course.
Krishna, I think I have a question.
Is your name Pandava Prabhu?
Das.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna. Any one of you, but of course first it's directed to you. Because in my experience of association with devotees, Janmastami is usually a huge celebration in the temple with so many devotees, but have any one of you had experience of Janmastami in a smaller group or family of Vaishnavas with, I would say, longer tradition? Something about that. How Vaishnavas, other devotees, observe the Janmastami.
It's a very good question. can I ask you a follow-up question just so I can understand? Can you say a little bit more about why you're asking the question? Just so I can understand. Is it because the larger celebrations can be a little bit distracting, or I just want to understand the reason for the question.
So it's because let's say when I joined the movement, ISKCON movement, so I was in the temple. So there was always lots of services to do, and then of course midnight arati and prasadam, and that was it. So later, when I became a family man, I was always drawn also to the temple large gatherings, but just I don't know, somehow during your speech, I just felt some kind of like more private mood that can be maybe sometimes have different, I don't know, flavor over that kind of large gatherings, or maybe you've seen it somewhere, how people in India in general, so this kind of concept, because again, maybe it's not the best comparison, but comparing to Christianity, for them, there's like, what's during the Christmas time, they are busy. They are not spiritually kind of thinking about Jesus, and then at the end of the day or during the night they go for the mass, and that's all. So so that's kind of my say, I don't know if I'm getting clear. So if you have for some reasons, or any one of you have some experience with tradition in India's family who are worshipping Krishna, how do they, let's say, celebrate Janmastami?
In my experience, Prabhu, in India, Shri Krishna Janmashtami is a huge festival everywhere. This may be the first year where even in India, in Vrindavan, the celebrations will be small, intimate celebrations in individual temples because of the pandemic and the lockdown. So I have many friends in India who are wondering how this will happen next week. But this may be the first time that happens. And also for us here, with most temples being closed. But traditionally in India, it's a huge festival. And it always involves very large numbers of people. It's a very joyful festival, and there's always a lot of seva to do. But in relation to what you've said, which I think is very, very important, I think you're touching on something that's really significant, which is that in temples throughout India, and also at Krishna Balaram Mandir, of course, in Vrindavan, the devotees will begin culturing a very sweet and the mood of Janmashtami, and like a meditation beforehand for several days, maybe a week beforehand, speaking about Krishna Tattva, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's qualities, how we can especially develop a relationship with Krishna. That's the difference between chanting the pure name and chanting Namabas. It's filled with a deep sense of relationship with Krishna. How to do that? And so that what happens then, ideally at least, is that there's an internal work that's happening, so that when the busy day of Krishna Janmashtami happens, there's so much seva to do, but it's done with a melting heart. It's as you're washing the pots, you're thinking, meditating on the pastimes of Krishna. You're thinking about praying for the mercy of Krishna. So that's generally how, at least I've seen it celebrated in India. It's a combination of a very intimate, of meditation in more intimate gatherings that then culminates in a big festival. And the sevaks who are doing so many activities are not doing it in a mechanical way, or doing it because they have to, or doing it because it doesn't become a social gathering with a material tinge to it, ideally, but rather it becomes something that's really a reflection of an inner desire to please Krishna.
Thank you for your comment.
I just want to add one thing, which I think is very important for myself and for all of us. We are aspiring for, Mahaprabhu explains, Prema Pumattu Mahan. Our aim of life is Krishna Prem. So there's a sadhana to attain that, a practice. Srila Rupa Goswami, in a very, very important way, he says, Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya bhav sa saranabhida nitya siddhasya bhavasya prakatyam riti sadhyata. If we're doing sadhana, our activities of the mind, body and words is only sadhana if we're doing it with the aim of developing these moods of love for Krishna. So I can spend a lot of time doing so much seva. I can distribute books. I can cook a lot of food for Krishna's offering. All of that is helpful. It'll give me sukriti. But it's not sadhana unless it's done with the purpose or the intent of developing these sweet moods of love for Krishna. So in that sense, this opportunity to meet a little bit before Krishna Janmashtami and think about these things and reflect on the teachings of our acharyas is so important. And without it, we may do a lot of activity, but it may not be sadhana.
Varshana Mataji, you want to say something?
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yes, I was just thinking exactly to cover what Pandava Prabhu was saying. I mean, for us, we are a small temple and we are a small group. And for us, when Krishna Janmashtami comes, it's the idea is to do we have the Abhishek. And that is so important because it's a chance for us to be near to the Lord and to offer all the rest of the devotees the seva of bathing the lords, of dressing them. And I mean, as for myself, I can say that I would, immediately be thinking about Krishna's jewelry and his dressing and how we're going to plan everything, the decoration of the temples. And of course, just like Sundar Gopal Prabhu, you just said that the preparations, for me, the preparation of what they call Chapan Bhog, I've never been able to do all that much, but I think I've got up to 51 or 52 preparations. And the idea is just so, it's overwhelming. There's so much to do. There's so much organization to do. And to me, when the devotees come and offer the Lords the Panchamrit and bathing them, and I think it brings them so close to them, although we may not be that highly qualified or have that knowledge of Krishna, but I think it's a way to keep the devotees motivated and happy and, enjoy that time for Krishna. So that's the way I look at it. For us, especially neophyte devotees, this is just such a blessing for us. And like I say, in a big celebration, it's quite a lot of things going on and you just sort of move with the crowd. But with the smaller premises like we have, and as we have been doing it with a few Matajis and few Prabhujis, I think it's brought us a lot of motivation. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it makes complete sense, Varshana Mataji. There's sometimes a real advantage in having a smaller group, and I understand completely. And I know from photos that have been shared of previous celebrations, not just Shri Krishna Janmashtami, but other important days in Leicester, at the temple. It's a beautiful opportunity, and a smaller group can be very intimate, and it has a different dynamic. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any question? Rashmi, what do you say?
I have an unrelated question completely. I don't know whether Sundar Gopal Prabhu feels it appropriate to ask. It's not related to Janmashtami.
Go ahead. Everything is related to Krishna.
So,
we make it related to Krishna.
Sundar Gopal Prabhu, I want you to explain, if possible, please explain to me really in detail what is Karma Yoga. Whatever I have read, whatever I have been hearing in all these years, it does not sit with me well. It does not sit with me well. It does not make any sense to me. There's so much conflict in my mind about Karma Yoga. Whatever I have heard, whatever I have understood, it does not sit well with what I hear when I hear some other speakers.
Right. Okay. Do we have time? I just want to ask, but I think it's a very interesting topic.
Yes, we have time.
Okay. If any devotees on this call, if any of you have responsibilities or things that you need to go to, please don't hesitate. Don't feel as if it will be impolite or anything. Just in case if we go over time, and then we'll continue. And if you're able to stay, that's great. And if not a problem at all.
We normally go up till 9 o'clock, and then it's Prasadam.
9 o'clock. That's 2 p.m. here. Okay. All right. Okay. There's plenty of time then. It's a great question about Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is a very important aspect teaching in the Gita, and to understand it is very important, because there are different teachings for different levels. And Krishna, although Arjuna is playing the role of a student and someone who's become confused, Arjuna is actually one of Krishna's greatest devotees and an eternal associate, a parikar of Krishna. But for our example, he plays the role of a confused person, and he asks Krishna for help. And Krishna explains to him the teachings of Karma Yoga and says, you have eligibility, adhikara, for this teaching. So in India, there are traditions of asceticism, where you abandon the world and you go to the forest and you practice, you have a spiritual practice in the forest on your own. And this is the yoga tradition. So Arjuna, he's faced with a conflict. He's a warrior. He's expected to engage in action. He's on a field of action. Kurukshetra is a field of action. It's happening just before a war when action is most needed. But he's confused and thinking this is something that's too difficult to do, to have to fight his relatives, to have to fight his teachers and friends. And so he says to Krishna, maybe it's better if I just, go to the forest. And Krishna explains something very important. This is the basis of Karma Yoga. He says, no one can escape action. It's not possible to escape action. Even the the mendicant, the ascetic who goes to the forest, they're also act. They cannot not. And in fact, Krishna says, if someone gives up the world and they're always, even, they go to the forest and they keep on thinking about the world, that person is really nothing but a hypocrite. Mityachara. Mityachara sa uchyate. So physically giving up the world is not much use, Krishna explains. What one needs to give up is attachment to the world. So karma yoga is Krishna's system of yoga, which can be done not in the forest, but it can be done in the middle of everyday life. So for us, this is very useful, very important. So Krishna explains 3 steps of karma yoga. The first step, Krishna says, is you have to act according to your nature. Krishna says, and I'm repeating exactly, Krishna says, what can repression do? So we each have a different nature. And in previous ages, that nature sometimes spoken of as being whether someone is a kshatriya, whether someone is has the nature of a trader, a vaishya. Someone may have the nature of a teacher. And even it's more specific than that. There are different types of warriors, different types of traders, different types of teachers, different types of artisans. So Krishna first says, Arjuna, you should be true to your nature. You can do someone else's work perfectly. But better than that is, you can, if you follow your nature, even if you make mistakes, even if there are faults, it's better than doing someone else's work perfectly. So that's the first teaching of karma yoga. The second teaching of karma yoga, Krishna says, give up attachment to the results. Now, when I first heard about this, I was very confused. Why? Because how can you put all of your heart into something and not care about the results? Is it even possible to do that? But Krishna explains it is. Krishna explains that giving up attachment to the results doesn't mean you don't care about what you're doing. You try your best. You put all of your heart into what you're doing. But at the end of the day, we don't actually have control over what the results are. So my father said I had written 2 books, right? In writing, these are 2 books that try to present the teachings of the Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam in a way that's easily accessible for contemporary readers. So if you're writing a book, you have no control at the end of whether that book will be well received or not received. If you do a Skype call or a conference, you don't know whether 5 people will come, 100 people, or 0 people. So, but when we become fixated on the result, it brings out all of the difficult, problematic qualities in us. What Krishna refers as the lower nature, the disposition of the asuras. We become frustrated, we become angry if things don't meet our expectations. We become very attached to particular outcomes. We try to control people and situations. And it actually can become quite ugly, and a lot of suffering is caused by that. So Krishna defines karma yoga in one place as yoga karmasu kaushalam. Yoga is skillfulness in action. So really karma yoga is how can we act in a way that's skillful? A way that's skillful, if we're acting in a way that's unskillful, it causes a lot of suffering in our life. And there are 3 main types of suffering: fear, lamentation, and confusion. That's suffering related to the future, the present, and the past. Fear is suffering related to the future, confusion to the present, and lamentation is suffering associated with the past. And these become very prominent when we are attached to events and outcomes. So, but when we let go of the need to control life, we understand we are actually not the controller. We can try our best, but Krishna's the controller. Then we're immediately released from suffering. And Krishna defines yoga in that way. Dukkha samyoga viyogam. Yoga is breaking our connection to suffering. So that's the second step of karma yoga. And to explain that step, I just want to give you an analogy, like an example. In India, they have a way traditionally for catching monkeys. So sometimes a village will get so populated by monkeys that they have to capture some of them and take them to the forest far away and release them. So the way they catch a monkey is you have a bottle or a jar that has a small opening. That opening is just small enough for a monkey to put its little hand in. And in that bottle, you put a banana. And you tie the bottle to a gate or to a tree. And sure enough, a monkey will come, squeeze its little hand into the banana, and try to take that banana. But when it grabs the banana, makes a fist and grabs the banana, it can't take its hand out anymore. So it's struggling there to try, and it's trapped. But by this stage, the monkey is so attached to that specific banana that it won't let go, even to the extent that the trapper, a person will come with a bag and capture the monkey. If it would only let go, it could probably get so many other bananas, all organic, free. But it's become so attached to that banana. So in our life, we also have our bananas, don't we? This has to be like that. This person has to see me in this way. We become very disturbed if something changes, or if we lose what we are attached to. The thing is, when we let go of our attachments, it actually opens up a space for incredible things to happen in life. Things we might not have even expected. Things may come into our life that are far more auspicious and helpful than we could have ever imagined. But that only happens if we adopt this second principle of karma yoga. The third principle of karma yoga is make your work an offering. So rather than do it for yourself or for myself, I will make it as an offering for Krishna. Now, for different people at different levels, this can mean different things. Krishna in the Gita speaks about acting for the welfare of the world. So one level of karma yoga is if someone does their work to benefit others. That's one level. But the highest level is if we can do everything that we do for the satisfaction of Krishna. When we make our work an offering, then that our work becomes like a sadhana. And this Krishna explains as karma yoga. Eventually we reach a stage where we can even go beyond karma yoga. We don't, anything we see in karma yoga, we will still do what is true to our material nature. But when a person crosses beyond the material realm and practices Shuddha Bhakti, pure Bhakti, then they will do anything for the satisfaction of their Guru Maharaj and the Guru Parampara and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But for those of us who are not at that level and who are active in the world, we can at least practice karma yoga. We can do something that is aligned with who we are as a person. We can be free from our attachment to the results, and we can make our work a loving offering to Shri Krishna. There's so much more to say on this incredible teaching of karma yoga, but this at least gives an outline of the three principles.
Questions? Has that been satisfactory for you, Rashmi? Is that clear? Something?
Yes, the second point is where my confusion is as well, that how can you do any task if there is no motivation? So if you want to study something, so for example, you want to become a doctor. So you know that you have to study hard, because you want to become a doctor. If that goal is not in sight with you, in front of you, there's no motivation. So my confusion is always that unless we have some goal in sight, we will never be motivated enough to work hard towards it.
That's because, it's a very good point. That's because a lot of people, when they explain karma yoga, they miss out the first step. The first step of karma yoga is be true to your nature. Krishna has given us a particular, we're not all built in the same way. Krishna has given us a particular nature, and that is a gift. It's our unique way of expressing ourselves in this world as an offering to Krishna. So if we're acting in accordance with our nature, we will automatically be motivated in what we're doing. So a warrior is automatically motivated in affairs of battle. I'm just giving an example from the Puranas. If someone is studying to become a doctor, if their nature is to become a doctor, then there is a certain part of them that will automatically go in that direction. They'll still need to do difficult work, sure, but their nature is helping them. So sometimes, if, for example, relatives are telling me you have to be a doctor, and my nature is not to be a doctor, my nature is maybe to be an artist. However much others may tell me what to do and pressurize me, it'll be an uphill struggle. And I may be able to do it. I may be able to force myself to do it, but I'll never feel fulfilled because it's acting against my own nature. But if my nature is to be a doctor, naturally I will tend towards that direction. But the important point is that in not being attached to the outcome, it doesn't mean we don't try. It doesn't mean we don't set goals. We still set goals. So take, for example, Arjuna. He's an archer. So Arjuna will have to take his bow, put an arrow on it, and he'll have to aim at the target. He can't just shoot in the air. He has to try his best. He has to fix an arrow onto his bow. He needs to take aim, see the target, and try to reach that. But once he releases the arrow, then what happens is outside his control. Imagine, you're shooting an arrow and then the arrow leaves and then you spend 2 days lamenting because you missed the target. That's what Krishna is saying. Once you release the arrow, then leave a space for things to happen in the way that they need to happen, without trying to always control. So in Karma Yoga, we still try to reach certain results. We have particular objectives, but we do it without the kind of attachment that causes suffering. It's sometimes Karma Yoga is described as, how have I seen this? I can't remember now. But it's a form of engagement in life that is very skillful. So it's engagement without attachment. Attachment is not the same thing as trying your best. That's very important. Not the same thing. And the motivation for trying one's best is to make it an offering for Krishna, and also because it's attuned, it's aligned with who we are, with our own particular nature. But I understand your point, and I had when I first learned about Karma Yoga, I had exactly those questions also. And how is it possible that to really put your heart into something and to try your best without being attached? So it's not that we don't plan or we don't have objectives. If you set up a business, you have to have a plan. You have to have financial goals. You'll have to make the books, and you'll have to make projections. And that's part of the business of running a business. And those things are all necessary. But once you try your best, how things happen is not up to us. And actually, I just want to share something very important about this as a last point. You may have had this experience in your own life. Sometimes we have a particular thing that we think is very important for our happiness. And we lose it, or it doesn't happen. And then in some years later, we're in a difficult circumstance. We think this is the worst thing that could happen to me. And then some years later, we realize that was the best thing that ever happened. I've certainly had that experience a few times. And conversely, sometimes we may think that something comes to us and we may think, this is really good. I'm so happy for this. And then some months or some years or even weeks later, we may think that was very unfortunate. What I thought was so good for me has been the cause of a lot of suffering in my life. So we don't even know what is auspicious and what is not auspicious in our life. So better that we try our best in the service of Krishna, and then we leave the results to Krishna. Krishna can be our protector, our maintainer. And that conviction is the beginning of bhakti.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. May I just add here something? That beautiful quote, I think, in Bhagavad Gita, where Srila Prabhupada says, we do our best. But if somehow or other the result is not coming, well, that happens in life. That is life. We do our very best, and even with the best endeavor, the result is not coming out of whatever. And then we become morose, we become frustrated and depressed even. So Srila Prabhupada says, we do our very best. But if the result is not coming, that's not our fault. Which means we are not attached to the result. It's not our fault, so we don't keep that attachment alive. We are attached to doing our duty on that level. We are attached to doing our duty, but we are not attached to the result of that. The result may come or may not come. Because if we get attached, we might get very disappointed if the result is not coming. Why should we cultivate such attachment and taking the frustration if the result doesn't come in the way we thought it should come? Anyone else has something to say? Arshana.
Yes, Haribol Prabhu. I think you can relate this, Gauranga Sundar Prabhu. I've been telling you for some time that we needed to do food for life. And you know, at the temple, we started at a very low level. Well, just today, we managed to do food for life, and I cooked for about 15, 20 people. And this is exactly what, as Sundar Gopal Prabhu, you just mentioned, that sometimes you're waiting for things to happen, and sometimes you want to take action, and you don't know what the results are going to be. Now, I'd been waiting and praying in my mind for some time so that I could do my prasadam or food for life, and an opportunity came along where the few Matajis or devotees said to me, oh, we're going to be doing food for life, and I said, right, this is my chance. Well, have they got a cook? And they said no, and I said, fine, I will do the cooking, no worries. And especially at this bad time of this coronavirus, I've got health issues and I'm shielding and not going out so much. But it just happened that these ladies were willing to just pick the prasadam up and go out into the town, and it was a hot day today, and distribute the food. Now, for me, that's something so pleasurable that, and it's something I was just reading about the quote where Srila Prabhupada wanted us to go out and feed people. And I think there's a quote where he says that nobody should go hungry within the 10 10-mile radius of a temple. And I mean, that really sits with me so well, because I have been cooking for the temple nearly 15 to 17 years, but the Food for Life has always been something I enjoy terribly, because it's feeding unknown people. And also at the same time, I'm always praying to Krishna that the devotees, or whoever people, homeless or people on drugs or wherever, that they would enjoy the prasadam. And there I'm thinking, I hope it's made a change to them. So in one sense, that's I'm relating that as saying that, okay, I'm not looking for any answers, just feeding them and doing what my Guru Maharaj would be doing, and following his path or helping him in some way. And this, my little thing of feeding people or doing as much as I can, would be my way of doing a seva without any asking for any rewards or having any other attachments. What would you say to that? I mean, is that a way of thinking? Is that thinking right? I mean, obviously, some people think I'm out of my mind, or I shouldn't be associating with people and with all this COVID and everything going on, but I just pray and do my best. Jay?
I would say you are just fine. Carry on. Thank you. Sundar Gopal, what are you saying?
It's very inspiring, Varshana Mataji, what you've just expressed and what you're doing. It's very, very inspiring. There are a lot of people in England and everywhere really in the world at this time who are really struggling to make ends meet, to the extent that they are practically, many of them, going hungry. So just at the level of helping them in that way, and more than anything, giving them Krishna Prasad, it's a beautiful thing that you're doing.
Jai, Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Ben.
Question came up in my mind. I was thinking that in terms of this karma yoga action in Krishna consciousness, can it be that sometimes they may lose all desire to do anything, because the nature in this material world is very competitive, and people, they strive to achieve various positions, and they want to attain the prestige, the power, the so-called kind of positions of being in control. It's all very alluring to people, but I was thinking that as potential devotees or aspiring devotees, it's like the more you're developing your Krishna consciousness, all these kind of desires, they seem to subside. I mean, I'm talking from personal experience. I mean, I had a career. I did so many things. I went to university. I got a degree. I had good jobs, but I was quite driven, at that time. But I don't feel like that anymore. I feel like these kind of desires have been removed from me. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that? Does that make sense to you?
That's what you've expressed, Ben Prabhuji, is also very inspiring for me. I certainly, when through the practice of Krishna consciousness, this desire to make something of ourselves in the world, it just becomes diminished. And in fact, even just the experience of suffering in this world, and how the various plans that we make and the things we think we can get through our own self-driven efforts to build a career or to gain prestige or to reach the pinnacle of some illusion in this world, just the suffering that that leads to and the empty destination of each of these attempts leads to the realization that these things cannot make one happy. And what I find so inspiring about what you've expressed is that this is considered to be the first quality of a true disciple, a true student of the Vedas. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a verse in the 11th canto which describes the qualities of a true student and the qualities of a true teacher. And you may have heard of it. Tasmad gurung prapadyeta jikyasu shreya uttamam shabde parecha nishnatam brahmanyupashamashrayam. So the first half of the verse describes the qualities of a true student. And so if we don't have these qualities, it means we're not even a student in this lineage. So the very first quality is tasmad. Tasmad means therefore. So to understand what that means, we have to look at the verses before that. So those verses before that explain exactly what Ben Prabhuji just said. Karma arabhyamananam dukkhatlai sukayachat, and so on. It explains that in this world we make such a hard endeavor to try and find happiness and to diminish unhappiness. But we find that we get just the opposite result. The happiness is very little and the suffering, it becomes increased. And then the verses explain, even in the heavenly planets, there is suffering and everything is temporary. Someone who understands this about the nature of the world is tasmad. That's the first quality of a true student. So to have Ben Prabhu remind us of that is really to remind us what it is, what the first step to being a student of the Vedas is, how important that is. And what's always interesting is that when someone explains anything from their own experience, as Ben Prabhu just did, it's very powerful. What Ben said is very simple in a way, but because he's expressed it, it's not intellectual. He's expressed that from his life experience, so it becomes very powerful and naturally moves anyone who hears that. In the Gita, Krishna explains that the three gunas, which is part of Sankhya philosophy, there's sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattva is sometimes translated as goodness, rajas as passion, tamas as ignorance. Really, there are no easy English translations. So I'm just going to use the Sanskrit. So the desire to make our way in the world and do a lot is in rajas. When rajas is activated, when it's predominant in us, then we want to do a lot. We want to achieve things. We want to have status. We want to have titles. We want to have wealth, business success, whatever it is, however we think in our confusion, we think will lead to fulfillment and happiness in life. And we're prepared to work very hard and tolerate a lot of suffering in order to achieve that goal. And that's in rajas. In tamas and in sattva, there's very little inclination to act. In tamas, a person is in a self-destructive mode. And that can be triggered in many ways. Our addictions tend to be they are in tamas. So if we're addicted to alcohol or to marijuana or to various other things, that's in tamas. And it's a lethargic place that is also destructive, self-destructive and destructive towards others. In that state, there tends to be very little impetus for action. So I have seen in my experience that people who smoke marijuana, for example, not for health, but as an addiction, they have a lot of lethargy and they don't have an inclination to do a lot. But in Sattva Gun, there's also no inclination to do a lot. Why? But it's from a different motive. It's that lack of desire to do a lot of action and to work very hard in a material way. In Sattva, in the mode of goodness, that's not there because a person in Sattva is self-satisfied. They're much more connected to the self, free from the designations of the body and the mind and the false ego. They're still caught up in this world. They still have attachments. They're attached to knowledge, wisdom, because someone in Sattva is wise. They have clarity. They're able to see the world as it is, more or less. They have a much clearer vision of the world. And they also have a sense of inner happiness. But they're attached to that wisdom and they're attached to that happiness. So they're still within this world. But it's a much freer condition. And it's the first step for spiritual life. Srila Prabhupada explains, at least first reach the level of Sattva Gun. And from there, spiritual life can begin. In Tamas and Rajas, it's very, very difficult to do anything related to spiritual life. Those of us who are really absorbed in Rajas, we have no time. So there may be a Krishna Janmastami being celebrated and we will think, I don't have time for this. I have to go to the office. I have this to do, that to do. That's in Rajas. If I'm in Tamas, I will think, okay, there's a Krishna Janmashtami festival. I can't be bothered to leave my room. I just want to sleep. And, maybe I'll turn up for the feast, get some prasad. That's influenced very much by tamas. But in sattva, it's the first step to spiritual life. And there is a clarity and a freedom from the desire to really try and find our happiness in this world. Rather, our sense of happiness comes from the Atma, from the self. And so you see people in sattva are usually able to lead very simple lives. They don't tend to complicate their life so much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. I would say one more question, last question, a little bit Kirtan, and then we disband for the night. Chotalal, any question? Is Bhagavati Mataji there also? Or are you alone, Pandava?
Pandava. Only Pandava does.
Yes. Okay.
So are we going to meet on Wednesday?
Yes, there was a bit confusion. I discussed that with Rashmi because last week it was said Janmastami is on Tuesday, so she booked her ticket to London on Wednesday, so not to miss the Tuesday. So and she said, please don't change it. I think it was coming from you. She said so. I think said Janmastami is on Tuesday. But
yes,
in my calendar,
I think I was confused because I thought that 12 was Tuesday for some reason. So my apologies. But then I looked into the calendar.
Confused. So, well, let's do a win-win situation. Let's have a program on Tuesday and on Wednesday. I'm all right with that. How does that feel?
Yes, that's fine. That's
Tuesday mainly Kirtan, and Wednesday some stories and reading from Krishna book perhaps and like that. How is everyone with that? Send a heart if that is all right with you. Okay, it's all right with Pandava.
I was going to do Janmashtami prayers for Tulsi on I thought it was going to be Tuesday. So will that be all right, or shall I do it?
Yes, of course it's all right. You do your Tulsi prayer and worship on Tuesday. Yes, everybody's encouraged to bring to this forum as much as possible.
Thank you. Yeah, I would do the Tulsi prayer on Tuesday then. That's 12th,
yes.
yeah?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Remind me.
Yeah, it was really nice to hear Prabhuji's all the prayers to him. Yeah, it was really nice to have him. Where is he based? Sorry.
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica. Okay.
Dr.
Can we get?
Dr. Lal.
Yeah. Can we? Yeah. Sorry, Ben. Yeah.
Yeah. Tuesday is not the 12th. It's Wednesday is the 12th. I just wanted to correct you on that.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we have a program on Tuesday at 7 and on Wednesday. So the Tuesday could be just a preparation for the Wednesday. More preparation. Today we had already a good preparation of our meditation, getting our heart ready. So on Tuesday even more, and then on Wednesday we'll actually celebrate the actual Janmastami. I hope that's all right with everybody. I would suggest we're doing a little bit, 5 minutes maybe, Kirtan, and then we close for the evening. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Nitai Sachi Sundar Nitai Sachi Sundar Nitai Sachi Sundar Jaya Nitai Sachi Sundar 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 Jaya Giri Govardhan Giri Govardhan Jaya 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 Giri Govardhan Jai Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Gurudev Jaya Gurudev Jaya Gurudev Jaya Gurudev Vanchakalpa Tarupyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaevancha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vanchakalpa Tarupyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaevancha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaevancha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaevancha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Let us offer our most respectful obeisance to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord who are just like desire trees and who are full of compassion to the fallen and conditioned souls. Hare Krishna.